Walking the tracks with Mr. Staley. This feels like an American experience to walk the train tracks. Some people make the argument that this direction, this train leads all the way to California. And other people say that go all the way to South Carolina coast if you follow that train track. I have about 3 things I want to tell you today on this train tracks. Well, first is hello, and I'm really glad you took the time to push play on this video. I bet that there's funner stuff to watch on Netflix and Hulu maybe than this video, but I doubt it. I'm pretty sure Canvas is the most fun streaming service available. And it's free. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is parallel structure. You know, politicians, poets, regular people use this thing called parallel structure. I'm going to show you how it works. Train tracks. I always used to draw train tracks on my dry erase board to teach parallel structure. Guess what? I don't have to draw train tracks on a dry erase board anymore. Thank you, pandemic. So here we go. Here's an example of parallel structure. Staley walks the tracks. Think about his students. Staley walks the tracks to get the cholesterol moving in his brain. Staley walks the tracks to forget about all his problems. Staley walks the tracks to think about white people and black people. Staley walks the tracks to dream. All right, now I could go on with that amazing poem, but I think you get the idea. Notice that each of those lines, Staley walks the tracks, each of those lines started with the exact same thing. And the beginning of each of those lines ran parallel, much like this train tracks. All right, well, that wasn't that hard. There's already one thing you just learned from me. And I'm not the first English teacher to talk to you about parallel structure, but maybe I'm the English teacher where parallel structure sinks in. Maybe I'm that English teacher. All right, story 2. Well, you know, Staley grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, the self-proclaimed cradle of the Confederacy. No, I am not a Confederate. I do not believe in slavery, like many of Alabamians still do. However, I wanted to tell you a little story. So I grew up near the train tracks, you know, and I live now near the train tracks in the Mesilla Valley. And some of y'all that go to the castle, I'm thinking you don't live near train tracks because the train tracks don't go up over that mountain, I don't think. So maybe the tracks are just like this valley thing. So if you've never been to the tracks, welcome. But I'm going to tell you a story. I was a little 10-year-old boy. Just a little 10-year-old boy. And I was in Montgomery, and I went down to the train tracks, and I had me a penny that I'd saved up from doing my chores. And I put my penny on the train tracks. And then, sure enough, here comes that train. And I saw it coming. I happened to be there when the train came. It was very loud, and I heard it. And I saw it. It was almost like in slow motion, y'all, because I was so excited for that train to come hit my penny. And you will never believe what happened. When that train hit that penny, the entire train just flew up into the heavens. It just flipped and flew straight up into the sky and started twisting and twirling up into the clouds and up into the stratosphere and the ozone. And finally, that train was just like docked with the International Space Station. So very crazy stuff. And I was just 9 years old. Like, who knew? Now you might be listening to that story being like, Staley, yo, pennies, there's no such thing as a penny. That might be where you're kind of wondering, like, what is a penny? But hey, in reality, you know that train did not really flip up into the sky. What happened in reality was that the penny got flattened. But that's not the point. The point is that I let my imagination retell that story of that penny and that train. I let my subconscious and my dreams sort of retell that story, because trains are very heavy, y'all. Trains are not like a little Walmart bag that's just filled with a dust storm and it's floating around up in the sky above Valley Drive. That's not what trains are. Trains are heavy. Staley, where are you going with this? Look, when you're writing in your journal 5 times a week, when you're writing in your journal 50 times a week, 5,000 times a week, when you become a creative writer that I know you are in your heart, I want you to allow that train to flip up into the sky. I want you to start lying. I want you to look up the word mendacity, and then I want you to use mendacity in your writing. Hey, you know what? Maleficent, that's a lie. Every Disney movie is a lie. It's just all made up. It's just everything in writing is made up. So I want you to start making stuff up and lying. All right, one more little thing. You guys are doing just great. Y'all now if you're playing this and like looking or watching some other screen, what are you doing? Why in the world would you be doing that? Go ahead and turn me off and focus your attention on the other screen, yo. Goodness gracious. All right, so white men have been thinking about trains for a long time. White men have lots of train writings. Gosh, Steve Goodman wrote a song called City of New Orleans, which Arlo Guthrie made famous. That's a great train song. It does have a little bit about race in there, about the black experience, but also lots of trains. Artists come to train tracks. Graffiti artists come to train tracks. Did you know that if a graffiti artist comes to a train and sees that he has tagged that train in the past, he will re-tag that train and add a new date. So sometimes when you're looking at graffiti, you can actually see a history of occurrences of the tagging. So the beat writers in the 1950s, people like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder, those dudes loved trains. They liked hopping trains. They liked riding on trains illegally. But you know what? White people are not the only ones that have something to say about trains. To end this little video, I'd like to share with you one of my favorite poems. If I was a better teacher, I'd have this poem memorized. If I was a better teacher, maybe next pandemic. This is called Freedom Train by Langston Hughes. And what a pleasure it is for me to take my students to the tracks and read this poem, Freedom Train by Langston Hughes. It was written in 1947. I read in the papers about the Freedom Train. I heard on the radio about the Freedom Train. I seen folks talking about the Freedom Train. Lord, I've been a-waiting for the Freedom Train. Washington, Richmond, Durham, Chattanooga, Atlanta, way across Georgia. Lord, Lord, Lord. Way down in Dixie, the only trains I see's got a Jim Crow coaches set aside for me. I hope there ain't no Jim Crow on the Freedom Train. No backdoor entrance on the Freedom Train. No sign for colored on the Freedom Train. No white folks only on the Freedom Train. I'm gonna check up. I'm gonna check up on this Freedom Train. Who is the engineer on this Freedom Train? Can a coal black man drive the Freedom Train? Or am I still a porter on the Freedom Train? Is there ballot boxes on the Freedom Train? Do colored folks vote on the Freedom Train? When it stops in Mississippi, will it be made plain everybody's got a right to board the Freedom Train? I'm gonna check up. I'm gonna check up on this Freedom Train. If my children ask me, Daddy, please explain why a Jim Crow station's for the Freedom Train, what shall I tell my children? You tell me. 'Cause freedom ain't freedom when a man ain't free. My brother named Jimmy died at Anzio. He died for real and it wasn't no show. Is this here freedom on the Freedom Train really freedom or a show again? Now let the Freedom Train come zooming down the tracks. gleaming in the sunlight for white and black, not stopping at no stations marked colored nor white, just stopping in the fields, in the broad daylight, stopping in the country, in the wide open air where there never was a Jim Crow sign nowhere, and no lily white committees, politicians of note, nor poll tax lawyer through which colored can't vote, and there won't be no kind of colored lines. The freedom train will be yours and mine. Then maybe from their graves at Anzio, black man and white will say, we want it so. Black man and white will say, ain't it fine? At home they got a freedom train that's yours and mine. That black poet is talking about how there's some unfairness between blacks and whites, and that was written in 1947. This isn't a politics class, y'all. This is a poetry art class. We're learning about art and literature. If you want to read more art and literature, check out Langston Hughes. He's ancient. He is ancient. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you guys back here, same place, same time. Next Zoom.